In this video I'll go over all the placements and decisions the finalists of the European Catan Championship in 2017 made. My name is Treeckosaurus, I'm a 3-times King of Catan finalist and Catan Universe Settlers of Catan Grandmaster, and I'll also share some of the tactics I used to get these results. Okay, enough bragging, let's get started. When I start, I immediately check the value of each resource. The bigger the number, the lower the value. And what jumps out is the fact there's only one strong ore spot on this map, the A34. I think ore and wheat are in general the most valuable resources, and I think this board is no exception. Wheat has a 5, 3, D11 and another 11, which makes settling on the 5 wheat pretty important. My first pick would be the A34 with double ore. It's not the highest producing spot, but the scarcity of ore makes up for it. The reasons I don't want to pick the A310 are the fact you'd leave open the A10 and the 634. The 634 and the A10 also provide ore, which wouldn't allow you to be the only supplier. In King of Catan episode 9, Piccolo talked about how he sees Settlers of Catan as a supply and demand game. And because there's only one reliable ore spot, everyone is going to look for ore. If you're red, you already know you won't start with all 5 resources, so you have to make sure others know you're willing to make a trade. Otherwise, they will start to steal it from you. Here are a few sentences to show you're a willing trader. Second position has a couple of interesting options left. Let's have a look at them. I always start looking at the highest producing one. 2 aspects that help you have a flexible game plan are diversity in numbers and diversity in resources. Based on these metrics, the 9, 5, 10 is a great pick. You're tied for highest production, 3 different numbers, 3 different resources and a rare weed. Other options are the 693, the 6411, the 6512 and the other 834 on the left part of the map. And remember, what you leave open will most likely be picked by your opponents. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots that are likely to be picked. So what spots are left open when I pick my second settlement? I think they are the 4, 5, 11, the 6, 3, 11, the 4, 9, 11, the 5, 10 and the 8, 10. A big question you have to ask yourself on this board is, how do I get ore? I have a couple of options. I could try to lock player 1 out of wheat, or trade with him, or I can use parts to get my ore. It's probably a bit of all of them. For me the best options are the 6, 4, 11 and the 9, 5, 10. The 6, 4, 11 provides both ore and wheat, and something that will help you out later on, the 3 for 1 board and the wood board. The downsides of the 6, 4, 11 are that you need to be lucky the other players leave open the A34, which is possible but unlikely. So we need to take a look at the spots which are likely to be left open. The 6, 3, 11 only leaves you with 3 different resources and 4 different numbers, which would rely on luck. I advise against this. Another spot you might leave open is the 4, 5, 11, but you rely on trading and on 3 numbers being rolled. I think it's a slightly better fit than the 6, 3, 11 to go along this 6, 4, 11 because players are more likely to block the 6 than the 4 or the 11. The first spot I'm looking at as an option to go alongside the 6, 4, 11 is the 9, 4, 11. I think this one is the best of the 3 spots because you also gain brick, but you still only have 4 numbers and a weird balance in your production. Now the pick for the settlement I would go with is the 9, 5, 10 plus the 8, 10 later on and play Orvi cheap plus the brick board. Now let's see where blue decided to go. In this game blue decided to go with the 6, 4, 11 and although I can see his reasoning for taking it, I fully disagree with his road pointing. Maybe he expects the 6, 5, 12 to be left open, but I think this is very unlikely. For red's first position, I don't think his road pointing is crucial. If he thinks the 8, 10 will be left open, pointing up is the best thing for sure. And building on the 10 tree is still fine, because you're looking for trades and wood is a decent trade resource on this board. And also because you'd expect blue to go for the wood board, which he didn't. Next up is white, who I believe should pick the 9, 5, 10 in this position. It combines well with the 8, 3, 4, the 8, 10 and the 5, 6, 11. In this case, going for the 9, 5, 10 to go along with the 8, 10 or with cheap isn't the right strategy. I think you don't want to leave open a strong brick or the sheep spot for the second position. For blue it would be less of a risk because you just want to prevent red from starting on or wheat and sheep. For white playing third position, I believe it's the best to point towards the wheat board. Although pointing upwards might be worth the risk, white indeed went with the 9, 5, 10 and he expects the 4, 5, 11 to be left open. Like I said a few seconds ago, I think he should go for the weak board. Next up is orange, playing as 4th position. If I were orange, I would build on a 6-9-3 for sure, because you lock at least one player out of brick, and this is crucial, because your big question is, how do I get ore? Now why is this crucial? Simple. If you have a trade partner who needs brick, being either red or blue, you can ask for ore. I would point my road upwards towards the 3-for-1 board. In general, I think the 3-for-1 boards are the best in the game. Players don't know what they need to block, so it becomes less likely they block you. If you have just a 2-for-1 board and a bunch of that specific resource, they know what an effective block it will be, so they're more likely to go for it. Back to the main topic, spot you want to combine that with can be this 5-6-12 and the 8-3-4. The 8-3-4 works well with the sheep board nearby, and it makes it more difficult for the other players, because they would either lack a 3-for-1 board or a high sheep number. On the other hand, 5-6-12 is about the same production as the 8-3-4, and it creates more balance within your resource game. It depends a little bit on how you play, what spots work the best for you. I would lean towards the 5-6-12 and point my road to the 9-12. Now, let's have a look at what orange decided to do. He agreed with the 6-9-3 pointing to upwards, but he made a surprise move picking the 5-6-11 instead of the 5-6-12. It's a bit of a defensive play, making it so the others can't pick the 6-3-11 and the 4-5-11. Getting to roads won't be that difficult for orange because he has a lot of wood brick and he has a lot of wheat poured into a potential wheat board. However, it will be very difficult for him to get sheep, which you want to use to build your first settlement. It's for sure a decent strategy, and I'm curious to see whether it will work or not. Next up is white's second settlement, and I think this one should go on the 8-3-4. You don't want to leave this open for blue, and it works well with the 9-5-10. White kinda surprised me when he selected the 8-10. It's a solid strategy because you gain all 5 resources with good overall numbers and room to expand to the 5-10. I would have selected the 8-3-4 though, because it would have made it so hard to win for both red and blue. I think the sheep board can provide you the necessary way to gain ore by trading 2 sheep with the bank. An upside of the 8-10 pick is being the strongest ore wheat sheep player on the board. Next up is blue's second settlement, and the only 3 hex spots left are the 8-3-4, the 9-4-11 and the 8-10-4. I believe picking the 9-4-11 doesn't work as well in this situation because you only use 4 different numbers. Strong upside of this spot is the space available around you if you point your road to the right. The 8-10-4 on the other hand would give blue an abundance of sheep and a bit of wood. It's an interesting option, but I think the wheat on the 8-3-4 creates a better balance in your resource gain, which leads to a higher probability of being able to make plays during your turn. Being able to make a play on your turn makes it less likely you have to make an awkward trade to avoid a potential 7 out. Blue decided to go with the 8-3-4, but I highly disagree with pointing his road towards the 9-4-11. The 9-4-11 is the only triple hex settlement spot left to pick for red second settlement, and it seems to work quite well with the 8-3-4. I would have tried to get on the 3-for-1 board so I can convert my wood into ore and brick more effectively. If red doesn't go for the 9-4-11, it's a brilliant road, because 4-9-11 is an excellent third settlement spot. However, it's very unlikely red will place at another spot than the 9-4-11. You could or be cheap with picking the 12-11, but that's way too low production. The other highest producing spots are the 8-10 and the 5-10. Although Orwood Sheep has the same ring to it, it's not quite as effective. Let's have a look at red's placement. Red indeed went with the 9-4-11 and he made an interesting road placement. Red pointed downwards, which indicates he wants to cut off white to build on the 8-10. He doesn't gain any sheep, so the 8-10 is a great spot for red. But even if he succeeds, he spent at least 10 resources in doing so, which is something I generally advise against, especially if your resource gain is 4-9-11 and 8-3-4, which aren't the highest average producing spots. Building on the 5-10 would also cost 2 resources less. There's one reason I can give for being this the right play, because white now spent 2 resources into building on the 8-10, red has a better chance of building on the 5-10, which he is raising for with white as well. This ended up happening, so this was some hidden brilliance by red. We take a look at how the board played out to see if the strategies are effective. White indeed cut off red to the 8-10 and red was able to win the race to the 5-10. Red also got a city on the 8-3-4, which is pretty good. White has a city on the 8-10 instead of the 9-5-10. The 8-10 provides ore, which white needs a lot of, because you have the brick. I would have upgraded the more producing 5-9-10 here. Another reason for this would be looking at who has the most development cards, and that's blue. If I were blue, I'd block the 8 ore over and over. Red is your competitor for the largest army and is also in the lead right now in terms of production. Orange immediately went for the wheat board, and I think this makes a lot of sense. If you look ahead again, we see Orange made some interesting moves. He won a race against Red to the 9-2 by placing a defensive road. Later he built another road so he can guarantee himself the longest road. Orange built a settlement on the 6-2 with the 3-for-1 port, and he built his first city on the 5-6-11 with the double wheat. I think he made the right moves, and upgrading his wheat gain to fuel his wheat port is a great decision. Red built a city on the 4-9-11, while White bought a development card and decided his next settlement is going to be on the 8 ore. Later on in the game we see Blue use some of his development cards, including a road building to cut off Orange while taking the longest road. We see the race for the largest army is between Blue and White, whom activated 2 knights each. Blue still has 2 unactivated development cards, so I'd say he will take the army. 4 minutes later a lot has happened. Blue now has both the army and the longest road, and he was able to build a settlement on the 12-11, giving him at least 8 and potentially 9 victory points with the uncertainty of the unactivated development card. Both Red and Orange have the possibility to take the longest road, and they should try to do this as soon as possible in my opinion. Orange spent his previous resources on getting a settlement on the 9-2 and upgrading his settlement on the 6-9-3 to a city. With that hidden development card he could have either 7 or 8 victory points right now. Red built a city on the 5-10 and built a settlement on the 4 ore with the wood board. White isn't capable of winning the game anymore, but it's interesting to see he wasn't able to get more development cards. At the end of the game, nobody was able to take the longest road before Blue got his 10th victory point by getting a city on the 6-4-11 and confirming his last development card is a victory point. But if the other players had tracked Blue's development cards more carefully, they would have known they had to take the longest road with some teamwork. Tracking cards and potential outs is very important to Settlers of Catan, and that's why I've made a video collecting all the information about tracking your opponent's hand cards. This video is available at patreon.com/Treeckosaurus, on which you can get access to the best videos I've made so far. Patreon is also the best way to support me, King of Catan, and the channel, and you can do that by selecting one of the tiers that fits your situation best. On Patreon I upload content I only share with my patrons. I personally think the hand tracking video is the best I've ever made, and if you want to become a better Settlers of Catan player or just support the work I'm doing, head over to patreon.com and select a tier that fits your demands. Now, let's turn it over to you. What settlement would you have placed differently? I reply to every single comment, so please let me know in the comment section. No playing Catan is the best in every single situation. It's always worth a debate, and you have an endless amount of options you can choose from if you're willing to look for them. Have a good one.